Imagine you're pulling over to a roadside food stand, drawn in by that smoky, delicious smell of grilled meat. You order a sandwich, take a bite, and just savor the flavor. Now, picture the man who once ran a stand like that saying this: the next time you're driving down the road and you see an open-pit beef stand that you've never seen before, make sure you think about this story before you take a bite of that sandwich. Sometimes, it's not all beef. Those are supposedly the words of Joe Metheny, a man whose crimes carved a uniquely grotesque chapter into the true crime history books. Welcome to a story that really blurs the line between some horrifying facts and what sounds like an urban legend. This is the case of Joe Metheny, a man who haunted the streets of Baltimore, Maryland. He wasn't just a killer. He confessed to something far more twisted, dismembering his victims and, in an unbelievable betrayal, allegedly cooking and serving their remains to unsuspecting customers from his humble food stand. His name became linked with a monstrous boast, that he'd turned human tragedy into a business, selling special meat to anyone who stopped by. We're about to explore the dark life of a man who claimed he loved to kill and had an even more disturbing way of getting rid of the evidence. This is a man whose confessions paint a picture of pure, unadulterated evil. We'll look into the confirmed facts, the shocking allegations, and try to understand the twisted mind of Joe Metheny. Joseph Roy Metheny was born on March 2, 1955, in Baltimore, Maryland. The details about his early life are a bit hazy, mostly colored by the stories he himself told later, stories that often served his own purposes. He claimed he had a tough childhood, saying his mother was neglectful and that his father died when he was young, supposedly in a car accident while working. Metheny suggested his mother sent him and his 5 siblings to live with various foster families, painting a picture of an unstable and uncaring upbringing. But you have to be careful with claims like these, as people like Metheny often twist their life stories to get sympathy or excuse their actions. He served in the U.S. Army in Germany during the 1970s, but by all accounts, his military career wasn't anything special. When he got back to Baltimore, Metheny drifted through different blue-collar jobs, like being a forklift driver and a laborer. He was a big guy, over 6 feet tall and reportedly weighing close to 450 pounds at one point, a characteristic that would later add to the fear he instilled in people. The spark, at least according to Metheny's own story, that pushed him into extreme violence was a domestic dispute. He claimed that in the early 1990s, his girlfriend at the time, Donna, took their young son and left him for another man. This, he said, ignited a furious rage inside him. His main mission then became finding Donna and his son, a search fueled by revenge and possessiveness. It was during this time, Metheny confessed, that he committed his first murders. He claimed he went to a bridge where he thought Donna's new partner and some of his friends hung out. Armed and enraged, he alleged he killed 2 men under that bridge, not with a gun, but with an axe, and then threw their bodies into the Patapsco River. He said these first killings were purely acts of revenge, driven by losing his family. He'd later say he never found Donna or his son, but this initial violent outburst, if you believe his confession, opened a dark door inside him. Whether these specific murders happened exactly as he described, or if they were just a way to make his story more dramatic, is still debated, as there was never definitive proof for these particular claims. Still, they became part of the chilling pattern of violence he'd later detail in his confessions to the police. This initial rage, this supposed act of revenge, was, in his telling, the spark that lit a much larger, far more terrifying fire. After those first alleged murders driven by the search for his ex-girlfriend, Joe Metheny's violence didn't stop. It seems it grew into something even more horrifying. His confessions painted a picture of a man who just kept killing, sometimes for revenge, sometimes for reasons as chillingly simple as, in his own words, because he enjoyed it. He became a predator, lurking in the shadows of Baltimore, targeting vulnerable people, often sex workers and the homeless, individuals whose disappearances might not immediately sound alarms. Metheny claimed his main reason for killing shifted from targeted revenge to a more general desire for violence and control. He described a cold, calculating way he went about his crimes. He'd lure victims to secluded spots, often his trailer or makeshift campsites, where he'd then overpower and murder them. His methods were brutal and varied, often involving strangulation or stabbing. He showed no remorse in his accounts, speaking of these acts with a disturbing coolness. The most uniquely horrifying part of Joe Metheny's criminal story, the claim that really set him apart from other serial offenders, was his alleged venture into cannibalism and selling human flesh. Metheny confessed that after some of his murders, he dismembered his victims' bodies. Then, according to his own statements, he took parts of the human remains and mixed them with animal meat, usually pork and beef. This gruesome mixture, he claimed, became the main ingredient in the sandwiches he sold from a small, ordinary-looking open-pit beef stand he ran in southwest Baltimore. He boasted that his customers, completely unaware of the horrific secret ingredient, loved his barbecue sandwiches. He reportedly told police, "I had a real small place, but it was a good stand. The human body taste was very similar to pork. If you mix it together, no one can tell the difference." Chillingly, he added that no one ever complained about the taste. He claimed he sometimes stored the human meat in freezers at his home before mixing it into the sandwiches. The flesh he couldn't use, he said, he'd bury in various places, including a pallet company where he worked. He alleged that he specifically targeted certain types of victims for this, usually those whose absence wouldn't be noticed for a while. He spoke of getting a thrill from this ultimate act of deception, feeding the flesh of his victims to the unsuspecting public. This horrifying enterprise, if his confessions are entirely true, shows an almost unimaginable level of depravity and a profound violation of trust. While Metheny confessed to killing as many as 10 people, and hinted at more, investigators had a hard time corroborating every single claim. Some bodies he said he disposed of were never found, and the full story of his cannibalistic business relies heavily on his own chilling testimony. He was, however, directly linked to several murders through evidence and his own detailed accounts of those specific crimes. For instance, he was implicated in the deaths of Kathy and Magazina, whose headless remains were found near the pallet company in 1996, and Kimberly Spicer, who was murdered in December 1996. He also confessed to killing Tony and Gracia. These were women who fit his pattern of targeting vulnerable individuals. The details he gave about these crimes often matched evidence found by investigators, which made at least these parts of his terrifying story believable. The story of the human burgers became his defining characteristic, a claim so grotesque it captured public horror and media attention worldwide, cementing his image as one of the most uniquely disturbing figures in criminal history. The end of Joe Metheny's reign of terror didn't start with the discovery of his alleged food stand horrors, but with the courage of a woman who managed to escape him. In December 1996, a sex worker named Rita Kemper accepted a ride from Metheny. He took her back to his trailer in the Washington Boulevard area of Baltimore, a place that had allegedly become a site of unimaginable brutality. Once there, Metheny attacked Kemper, trying to sexually assault and murder her. According to Kemper, Metheny, who was drunk, became enraged. He beat her and threatened her life. Despite the terrifying situation and Metheny's massive size, Kemper fought back hard. She managed to escape from the trailer and ran, bloodied and terrified, to the police for help. When officers arrived at Metheny's trailer to investigate Kemper's report, they found a scene that hinted at the darkness within. Metheny, who was cooperative at first, soon became a prime suspect not just for assaulting Kemper, but for something much bigger. Kemper's harrowing account gave investigators the crucial break they needed. The police investigation quickly ramped up. Based on Kemper's testimony and their initial findings, authorities got a search warrant for Metheny's property and the grounds of the nearby Joe Stein and Son Pallet Company, where Metheny worked and sometimes lived in a makeshift shelter. It was here that the grim reality of his confessions started to come to light. During the search of the pallet company grounds, investigators made a horrifying discovery: a shallow grave containing the decapitated remains of a woman later identified as 23-year-old Kathy and Magazina. Her head was never found. The location and way she was buried matched some of Metheny's later confessions about how he disposed of victims he didn't use for his alleged food stand. Facing Kemper's testimony and the discovery of Magazina's body, Joe Metheny was arrested on December 15, 1996. The first charges were for the attempted murder and assault of Rita Kemper. However, as the investigation went deeper and Metheny began to talk, the scope of his crimes would prove to be far wider and more shocking than anyone initially imagined. His capture, thanks to one woman's desperate fight for survival, finally stopped his predatory activities and set the stage for a series of chilling revelations. Once he was in custody, Joe Metheny started to confess. And what he confessed to was a list of horrors that stunned even experienced detectives. Far from being sorry or hesitant, Metheny seemed almost eager to talk about his deeds, speaking with a chilling calmness and, at times, even a sense of pride. His statements painted a picture of a man with no empathy, a predator who killed for power, for revenge, and, as he admitted himself, simply because he enjoyed it. He readily admitted to murdering Kathy and Magaziner, whose body was found at the pallet company. He also confessed to killing Kimberly Spicer, another young woman whose body was found elsewhere. He gave details about these killings that only the killer could have known, which solidified his guilt in these cases. But his confessions didn't stop there. He claimed responsibility for a string of other murders, estimating his total victim count to be around 10, though he sometimes hinted it could be higher. He talked about luring sex workers and transients back to his trailer, where he would strangle or stab them. Metheny explained his reasons with a disturbing clarity. He claimed his first killings were acts of revenge because his ex-girlfriend left him. But after those, he said, the words, "I'm sorry" will never come out, because I'm not. He expressed a profound sense of power and excitement from the act of killing. It's like a rush, it's like a high. The more you do it, the more you like it, he reportedly told investigators. He described the feeling of taking someone's life as an addiction, a thrill he actively looked for. The most infamous part of his confessions, of course, was about the human burgers. He detailed how he would dismember some of his victims, carefully separating flesh from bone. He described mixing this human meat with pork and beef to hide its taste and texture, then selling it from his roadside barbecue stand. He seemed to get a sick satisfaction from this ultimate deception, fooling his customers into cannibalism. He even offered advice on the best way to prepare human flesh, suggesting that it tasted better when mixed with other meats. However, investigators and prosecutors were a bit skeptical about some of his more over-the-top claims. While there was solid evidence linking him to the murders of Magaziner and Spicer, and his confession to killing Tony Ingrassia was also considered believable, proving the full extent of his alleged 10-plus murders and the widespread sale of human meat was tough. Some of the bodies he claimed to have killed and buried were never found. There were questions about whether Metheny, hungry for notoriety, might have been exaggerating parts of his story, especially the number of victims and the scale of his cannibalistic business. It's not uncommon for serial offenders to inflate their victim counts for attention. Despite this skepticism about the exact numbers, the core of his confessions about his brutality and his disturbing mindset was undeniable. His detailed knowledge of the Magaziner and Spicer murders, along with the physical evidence and Rita Kemper's testimony, painted a clear picture of a dangerous and depraved individual. His lack of remorse was absolute. He saw his victims as disposable, just objects for his violent urges. The mind of Joe Metheny was a dark and twisted place, where empathy had been snuffed out and replaced by a cold, calculating cruelty and a chilling enjoyment of the ultimate act of wrongdoing. This case is a really stark reminder of the darkness that can exist. If you're finding this look into the twisted mind of Joe Metheny compelling, and want to see more true crime stories that explore the psychology of such cases, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. We'd also like to hear your thoughts. What part of Joe Metheny's confessions do you find the most disturbing? Let us know in the comments below. After his arrest and shocking confessions, the legal process against Joe Metheny began. He faced charges for the murders he had been definitively linked to and for attempting to murder Rita Kemper. Given how heinous his confessed crimes were and the evidence against him, the prosecution pushed for severe penalties. In 1998, Joe Metheny went on trial. For the murder of Kathy and Magaziner, he initially pleaded guilty but later tried to take back the plea, a move that was denied. He was found guilty and sentenced to death for her murder. In a separate trial, he was convicted for kidnapping and attempting to murder Rita Kemper, the woman whose escape led to his arrest. For these crimes, he got 50 years in prison. He was also found guilty of murdering Kimberly Spicer and received a life sentence for that crime. However, Metheny wouldn't actually be executed. In 2000, his death sentence for the Magaziner murder was overturned by the Maryland Court of Appeals because of a technical issue with the jury instructions. Instead of facing a new sentencing hearing where the death penalty could be brought back, prosecutors and Metheny's defense made a deal. He was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Magaziner's murder. This, along with his other sentences, made sure that Joe Metheny would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Metheny was locked up at the Western Correctional Institution near Cumberland, Maryland. He spent years in prison, a notorious figure whose gruesome claims about serving human burgers continued to horrify and fascinate the public. He gave interviews from prison, sometimes repeating his confessions, other times offering cryptic or contradictory statements, which further muddied the waters about what was verifiably true in all his alleged crimes. The aftermath of Joe Metheny's case left a dark mark on the community and raised some chilling questions. For the families of his confirmed victims, the pain was unimaginable. The thought that their loved ones had not only been murdered but also, potentially, subjected to the ultimate desecration, was an almost unbearable horror. The wider public had to grapple with the disturbing reality that such a predator had operated nearby, and with the unsettling idea of how close they might have come to his roadside stand. The question of how much of Metheny's story about the human burgers was true versus just boastful exaggeration may never be fully answered. Investigators were never able to definitively prove widespread cannibalism for profit, and some remained skeptical about the sheer number of victims he claimed for that specific purpose. Still, his confirmed murders and his remorseless nature were enough to cement his place as a truly monstrous figure. On August 5, 2017, Joe Metheny was found dead in his prison cell. He was 62 years old. His death brought a final, quiet end to a life marked by extreme violence and depravity. The horror of his crimes, especially the uniquely disturbing claim of serving human flesh, ensures that the twisted case of Joe Metheny will continue to be a subject of grim fascination and a chilling reminder of the depths of human cruelty. The story of Joe Metheny is a truly disturbing testament to the evil that can hide beneath an ordinary surface. His chilling confessions, especially that grotesque claim of serving human meat, force us to face uncomfortable truths about the predatory nature of some individuals and how vulnerable their victims can be. While the full, verifiable truth about his cannibalistic business is still debated, the confirmed murders and his total lack of remorse paint a clear picture of a man who loved violence and control. His own alleged words, a warning about roadside beef stands, serve as a haunting epitaph to his dark legacy, a reminder that sometimes the most horrifying monsters are all too real. The case leaves us with lingering questions about what evil really is and the secrets that can hide in plain sight. Thank you for joining us for this look into the twisted case of Joe Metheny. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button, subscribe for more true crime content, and share your thoughts in the comments